it's going to be a brief marathon for 15 minutes and then Q&A. That being said, so let's start our meditation. So everyone please sit in a comfortable position, leaving your palms together on your lap and with your back straight and upright, with your shoulders dropped and with your chest open. So let's listen to the meditation gong. Listen to meditation gong, sound of the meditation gong fading away. Shall we slowly close our eyes? And then, in order for us to disconnect from our noisy, hectic surroundings, we will now practice deep breath for a couple of minutes. Before you start doing that, now that you are sitting with your back straight and upright, with your palms left on your lap, with your chest open and with your shoulders dropped, with your eyes closed, just practice, bring your attention around your nostrils. It is at the nostrils which is the focal point of mindful breath. It is at the nostrils where the incoming breath begins and the outgoing breath ends. I know you come from different levels of meditation, with different levels of experience in meditation. Some of you have practiced some of you have practiced Vipassana for a long time. But it's happy that you are being given an ample opportunity to apply vipassana into your understanding of true nature of yourself in light of mental pains and physical pains. That has been said last night in the meditation from before the church tonight. We will start our silent meditation. Thank you. I have chosen two misleading statements that people who misinterpret or slander the Buddha make. And then, so for the last 20 years or so in the West, I have been asked by people from different backgrounds, different religious and educational and different cultural backgrounds, whether Buddha is self-contradictory, whether Buddha has contradicted himself in his teachings. Then I would ask them why they were saying that. And they say that, and they refer to, then they come up with their statements. And their statements are regarding the Buddhist teaching of self and no-self, and karma and no karma. Now, the first statement is regarding self and no-self. What they say is that in their own language, in his teaching, Buddha says that there is no self, hence no self or non-self. Then it's okay to do anything that we would like to do simply because there is no self. Even if we do bad things, unwholesome things, unethical things, immoral things, it doesn't affect ourselves. Why? Because there is no self to go through the repercussions, karmic repercussions, or to face the consequences of our bad karma, of our action. So, and that is the first statement that slanders the Buddha, that misinterprets the Buddha. And second statement is regarding karma. And in their own language, in their own words, this is how they say that. Buddha says there is no doer of karma, kammasakarako natti. Because there's no one doing karma, there is no doer of karma. And so that as a result, there is nothing called karma. So it doesn't matter we even do bad things. Simply because there is no person, there's no individual, there's no doer who is responsible for his karma actions, and then karma is nothing. There's nothing called karma because there is no doer. Actions are actions. They are mere actions because there's no one doing that. Now that is the second misleading statement. Now these are the two universal factors, self and no self, and karma and no karma, that people often use to misinterpret the Buddha. And then Buddha himself says in the Nyatta Sutra of the Anguttara Nikaya, and in the Alagattupama Sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya, that there are two people, two kinds of people who slander him, who slander the Tathagata. And then, so if I directly translate from the Nyatta Sutta of the Anguttara Nikaya into English. In English, this is English translation of the Buddha's statement regarding those who misinterpret him. Monks, they too slander the Tathagata. Friends, Tathagata here means the Buddha. Which two? He who explains a discourse whose meaning needs to be inferred as one whose meaning has already been fully drawn out. And he who explains the discourse, whose meaning has already been fully drawn out, as one whose meaning needs to be inferred. Now here, Buddha talks about the people who misinterpret him. And then so at this point, I know today the title for this theme for today's brief Dhamma talk is snake catching, but that's a simile. But before we go to the simile, let's clarify this. Now, even some of you have asked me that you have asked me, if there is no self, then how and why do I feel myself? And at the same time, the second question, some of you have asked me a question regarding the second factor as well. If there is no doer of karma, if there is no one to do karma action, so how can there be karma, something called karma? So, and then they say, okay, I assume that there's no karma. I assume that there is no karmic repercussions that the selfhood has to face one day, because there is no self. But in order to, and then during the Buddha's time also, there were some people who did not understand that Buddha's teaching, Buddha has given his teaching in two levels, and he talks about two levels of teaching. And then first level of teaching is called Sammuti, S-A-M-M-U-T-I, Sammuti. And second one is Paramattha, P-A-R-A-M-A-T-T-H-A, Paramattha. Sammuti teachings, it's called Sammuti Satya, or the teachings based on Sammuti Satya, S-A-C-C-A, Satya means truth. In Sanskrit is Satya, S-A-T-Y-A, Satya. So his teachings are twofold. Sammuti Satya teachings, Paramattha Satya teachings. Sammuti Satya teachings are the kind of teaching that is based on conventional realities. And Paramattha Satya teachings are the teachings that are based on the absolute realities. Now, and then these two levels of teachings are never to be mixed up. And that is where, when you mix up these two teachings, and then you happen to confuse yourself. Now, so in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the Nayyatta Sutta of the Anguttara Nikaya, and here, and then in the Alagattupama Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, and then Buddha recommends that you don't misinterpret him, that you don't slander him by mistaking the Nayyatta teaching or Sammuti Satya teaching as a Paramattha Satya teaching or the Nitatta Sutta teaching, and not by mistaking the Nitatta or the Paramattha Satya teaching as a Nayyatta or the Sammuti Satya teaching. And these two words are, let me explain the two words Nayyatta. Nayyatta teachings mean the kind of teachings whose meaning needs to be further inferred and drawn out. Nayyatta. And Nitatta teachings are the kind of teachings that needs no further clarification, no further analysis, and their meaning is already drawn out. Now, so these are the two kinds of teachings. Now let's because given the short time, now let's look at the first misleading statement regarding self and no self. Now, so do you have a self? Yes, you do. Do I, this monk, have a self? Yes, I do. Then what is no self? Now, does Buddha have a self? Yes, he does. Then why do we say that Buddha has no self. Now, the question, the clarification regarding that depends on another pair of words, attachment and no attachment. Now, Buddha has feelings. He feels hunger, he feels thirst, and he feels like cleaning his body. And then whenever he is sick, whenever he is ill, sick, and he feels his illness, and he takes a break, and when he feels tired, but he has no attachment. He has zero subject to attachment, subject to approach, subject to approach to his feelings. So that whereas our feelings are driven by clinging. Now, so when it comes to our feelings, when we talk about ourselves, our approach to our own self is always based on clinging, or upadana, U-P-A-D-A-N-A, upadana, clinging, or simply attachment. And then, so that when Buddha feels like, when Buddha wants to eat, and he would get his arms full and go on arms round and collect food from the people, from the community, and then he would eat. Because he needs nutrients, he needs to maintain his health. Whenever he feels thirsty, and he would drink water. Whereas, when it comes to us, ordinary people, we don't simply eat when we are hungry. And then we consume. Before eating actual material food, we first consume a concept thereof. We look at the food and then say to ourselves, this food is not as good as the one that I ate yesterday, and this is not the kind of food I wanted today. This is the worst ever food that I have come across. And then so we are brand conscious. We are driven by concepts. First we conceptualize our food. And then when it comes to consumerism also, we don't, before we consume a certain thing, that we consume the brand in our mind, our head. Then and so that we happen to reject that. That's because of our attachment to the things that we get. And that is called self. Whereas Buddha does have a self, but he doesn't have an attachment to his self. And then so that he doesn't complain that the food is bad, or the food is the best, or the worst or the best. Whereas we do. That's called, we are self-oriented. And even though Buddha lives in the world upon his enlightenment, he has no attachment whatsoever to his body, he has no attachment whatsoever to his feeling, and so that he is selfless. So being selfless is called no self-living. And Buddha's life is a life of no self, whereas our life is a life of selfhood. Actually, we are even selfish. Buddha is selfless. And then he has a selfless self. We have a selfish self. I myself have come across over 60 books trying to explain the difference between self and no self. And those who read those books get more confused. And then based on if you refer to his Nitatta type of teachings, or the teachings based on the absolute truth or the Paramatta Satya, in there you come across a statement that Kammassa Karako Natti. There is no doer of karma, Vipaka Satya. So there is no one going through facing the repercussions, who is facing his own karma. And Sutta Dhamma Pavattanti, and so forth. There are only particles, there are just only energy particles, atomic particles, and there is physical energy, and then those energies also, when in the ultimate analysis of matter, nothing is existent really. There's nothingness. Finally, there's nothingness. Even when the atom is broken into different particles, and each atomic particle is further reduced, and then you come to the point, there's nothing left. That's called nothingness. And so that is the approach. No self is the approach to himself. No self is the approach of enlightened people. Unless you are enlightened, it's too early for you to apply the no self approach to yourself. Why? Every time you try to apply the no self approach, you end up being more selfish. Because as long as we are not enlightened, we are self-subjective. We are subjective. And enlightened people are non-subjective. They are non-subjective of even their own existence. And in even nirvana, we have a subjective approach to nirvana. So that's why most people think that nirvana is another different landscape away from this samsara, and we move there from this samsara to that landscape of nirvana. See, we always need to attach to something. We always need, out of fear and insecurity, we feel that even nirvana must be something that is enjoyable. So, that being said, so that is, and the second, that being said, those are then the karma. Karma, no self and self and no self, and karma and no karma are the two factors that most people misunderstand. Now that is the Nitatta type of teachings, or the teachings, Buddha's teachings based on the absolute truth, Paramatta Satya. So the teachings, sutras, discourses based on the Paramatta Satya, or the absolute level of truth, is called Nitatta Suttas, discourses whose meaning has already been drawn out and that needs no further analysis. And then let's look at the other type of teachings, Niyatta Suttas, the kind of teachings or discourses that needs to be inferred, whose meaning needs to be inferred, whose meaning is yet to be drawn out, and then such teachings are called Niyatta. And Niyatta teachings are based on the lower level of truth. That is called the Sammuti Satya, or the conventional truth. Within the conventional truth, and Buddha says, okay, there are people who are supposed to perform their duties and obligations, and within the Niyatta Suttas, within the teachings based on the Sammuti Satya, or the conventional realities, and Buddha talks about our moral responsibilities, making money, getting education, getting educated, and maintaining relationships, making ourselves happy, making money, saving money for future use, and then so that dealing with our insecurities, and we need to live our life happily, and then we need to satisfy our hunger, and then it's okay to maintain your beauty, and beauty is not condemned in Buddhism, and so forth. And all the world things that you are do, and you have to do within not violating legal and moral boundaries, accepted legal and moral boundaries. Without hurting anyone else, you can achieve your own worldly goals. So those are the kind of things based on. Recently also I come across a professor who told me that he would do anything that he would like to do, because he said that because Buddha has never said there is a doer of karma and there's nothing called karma. And then I told him, sir, you are utterly mistaken. You are referring, you are misinterpreting the Buddha. You have mixed up the two kinds of teachings. And then so that you have to first, whenever you come across a certain teaching, the first thing you are supposed to do, sir, is that you have to see whether it's Neyatta teaching or Nitatta teaching, whether it's a teaching that is based on the Paramatta Satya or the absolute truth, of which there is nothingness, there's no self, nothing really exists, and existence is based on our attachment, based on our perception. And when you because perception is a mirage, and so that whereas when you come across a teaching where Buddha talks about, in which Buddha talks about our ethical, moral obligations, making money, living our life happily and all that, at that time, you need to see that as a teaching based on the Sammuti Satya or the conventional truth. And then, so Buddha explains that by the snake catcher's simile in the snake catcher's discourse on the snake catching, that's called Alagatta Upama. Upama, Alagatta means snake. Upama means simile. His teaching based on a simile of snake, Alagatta. And he talks about two kinds of snake charmers. You know, snake charmers is a profession, especially you can, in gypsy communities, you see, especially in South Asia, you come across snake charmers. So they catch snakes and they charm snakes. They are called, in Pali, they are called ahi guntikas. Ahi means serpent, guntika means to catch and train and tame. Ahi guntikas in Pali, meaning snake charmers, snake catchers. Now, Buddha talks about two kinds of snake catchers. First one is an amateur, someone who is new to the profession, who is new to snake catching, and the second one is an experienced snake catcher. Now, there is this amateur, or who is a young man who is new to, who just started his profession. But in snake catchers, in gypsy communities, in Ahiguntika communities, you maintain your dignity. You have no dignity, you have no self-esteem unless you have your own snake. So that now this young man who is new to his profession, and now he doesn't have his own snake, cobra. Now he is traveling in search of his, so that he is combing through the bushes looking for a snake. All of a sudden he comes across a snake. A cobra is a beautiful one, and so that and he is by himself. He doesn't actually know how to catch a snake. He had never done that before, and he approaches the snake, and then all of a sudden he jumps, and then he captures. He takes the snake by the middle of his body, and then what happens is the poisonous snake, the cobra, turns back and he bites him, and it would be fatal for him. He may even die from the snake bite, so that he gets bitten by the snake. Now that is the amateur or the new snake charmer, snake catcher, who is now new to the profession, who is just starting his profession. And second one is an experienced snake catcher. Now he has experience catching snake, and he had caught a lot of snakes. And then what happens is, now just like the first young man, now this is an experienced man. He has lots of experience in snake catching. Now he also wants to catch another snake. And then when he is looking for a snake, all of a sudden he sees a snake, a beautiful big one, and he approaches that, and he has a stick in his hand. What he does is he approaches the snake from a certain safety corner, a safe angle, and he is now approaching the snake from a safe angle. And then what he sees is he maintains his position, and then he approaches the snake, and then he slowly presses his stick onto the snake's neck, just below his head, and then he presses it further, harder, to the ground, so the snake cannot move. And then all of a sudden, then what happens is he catches the snake, he takes the snake by his neck, and he squeezes, and so the snake cannot move. And so that the snake loses his grounds, and he can't turn back and bite the catcher. And then so he's safe now. So when it comes to learning the Dharma also, simply because you come across a teaching, and then so that especially a teaching that deals with self and no self, the difference between self and no self, or the karma and no karma, like that. And then if you mistake the Buddha's teaching as a Sammuti, Paramattha teaching as a Sammuti teaching, or Sammuti teaching as a Paramattha teaching, if you mistake Nayatta teaching as a Nitatta teaching, and a Nitatta teaching as a Nayatta teaching, if you mistake a teaching based on Sammuti, absolute truth as a teaching based on the conventional truth, and other way around, and so that it's like it's like you are being like a young snake catcher who encounters and then who might be who might get bitten by a poisonous snake that you are trying to catch. Thank you. In case you have any questions, I'll feel more